Hi, and welcome back to This Week in Voice, Season 8, Episode 7. My name is Bradley Medrock. I'm CEO of Project Voice. We got a great panel for you today on the show. Don't forget about Project Voice 2023. We are very well on track to surpass attendance from 3 years ago, which was the biggest year prior to COVID. We got a lot of news coming out about the Conversational AI Leadership Council. We spoke briefly about it last week. The charter, the new Ethics and Integrity Charter on LLM-based AI is forthcoming, and there will be a lot of chatter around that. So keep an eye out. We'll have much more to say about that soon. I want to give each panelist a chance to introduce themselves. Neji, I'm going to start with you. Tell us who you are. Tell us about PayTalk.
Okay, thanks a lot, Bradley. So my name is Neji Tawo. I am the founder and CEO of a conversational AI startup called PayTalk. So basically what PayTalk is there's 4 billion devices that have voice assistants like Alexa, Siri, Google. And these devices are highly underutilized. So you can just say things like, oh, set the alarm, or what's the time, or what's the weather. So what PayTalk does is that we give these devices superpowers, so they become uber smart and able to do things like, hey, get me coffee every morning by 7 a.m. on your Alexa. Or you could say, hey, Siri, you know what, write me an essay on the use of software in development or something like that, and it will do the GPT thing as well. Oh, sorry, Siri, you can hear that right now. So what we do is that we bring in these capabilities to voice assistants, and we are very big on conversational AI and voice. We launched PayTalk about a year ago, and we are currently going into different spaces where conversational AI makes a lot of sense, like ticketing, travel, and all of that. We're based in Canada. At the same time, we are also in the US, in New York. And Bradley, I think I would say that's where we are.
Neji, it's great to have you on the show, and you are based in Canada. A fact we will not hold against you. Thank you for joining us. Next up, we have Brian Rubin of Cerence. Brian, say hello.
Oh, hi everyone! Excited to be part of this panel, and I should confess I'm also from Canada, although I'm from the worst part. No, just kidding. We're the best part. We're the one that produces electricity in Quebec. So, my name is Brian Rubin. I'm based in Montreal. I'm a senior director and responsible for lab innovation and demos at Cerence. Cerence is a global conversational AI specified for the transport industry. Our technology can be found in 1 out of every 2 cars worldwide. So if you drive a car, you probably use our technology on a daily basis. We work with all the major car manufacturers. Probably you won't be able to find a car manufacturer we don't work with, such as Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen, Toyota, Stellantis, Ford. We work also with some of the newer EV providers, such as VinFast, NIO, etc. One thing that a lot of people aren't aware of about Cerence is that we own our own technology stack. We have our own automatic speech recognizer, so our own ASR, homegrown, NLU, NLP, NLG, and TTS. So the entire stack is IP by Cerence. So we don't use any Google or Azure or anything like that for the back end. And right now we're in an evolution from just a pure voice assistant to a full immersive co-pilot experience. So that's about me and Cerence.
Ryan, it's great to have you on the show. And Cerence is a proud organization, an accomplished organization. We're thrilled to have you. Thanks for making the time. Next up, we've got Dan Turchin of PeopleReign. Dan, say hello.
What's happening, Bradley? Good to be here.
Great to have you on the show. Yeah, great to have you on the show. Tell us all about PeopleReign.
Well, for starters, it's a rare tech conversation where I have to start by saying I'm an outlier because I'm in Silicon Valley. What are you going to do? But to CEO of PeopleReign, the AI platform that automates the delivery of IT and HR employee service. I started the company about 5 years ago. We're on a mission to make work-life better for the next billion employees. And we do that by extracting all the friction that exists between employees and their employers and making work delightful. And ironically, we do that using AI, but we use AI to humanize work, to make it easier for employees to spend an hour or two less per week waiting on hold, being treated like a ticket, and more time getting the work done that they love and that they're passionate about. Bradley, as you know, because you were a great guest on my podcast, my passion project is I host a podcast called AI and the Future of Work. We've done about 185 episodes with legends like Bradley. And in terms of my background, PeopleReign's the 7th company I've started in and around applying AI machine learning to employee service. Bad news is I'm kind of broken for ever doing anything else, but it is a life's passion. And look forward to getting to know the panelists better and talking about the stories for today.
Dan, we're grateful for you. Thanks for being part, and flattery will get you everywhere. Thank you for that. Next up, we have Seth Levine of Loris. Seth, say hello.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Brad. Really appreciate you inviting me here. I'm the lead machine learning scientist at Loris. We've developed a platform that allows CX teams, customer service teams, to do their jobs better. Basically, we identify the reasons every customer is contacting the company. We analyze sentiment throughout every conversation, and we then give companies the ability to take action from there. So we have an agent assist platform, insights, and QA. My role is keeping us on the cutting edge and applying machine learning and NLP to all of these conversations. The exciting thing is that at this point, working there for a couple of years, we've analyzed millions of conversations across many different companies and industries, from telecom to e-com to fintech and food delivery. Separately, I recently launched a podcast of my own, Learning from Machine Learning, where I interview experts on machine learning and talk about their work, but also career advice and how technology is influencing society and, some life lessons as well. With all of this hype around artificial intelligence, I like to share that my background is also in human behavior and evolution. I studied the evolution of intelligence. So it's really great to be here. Thanks, Brad.
It's great to have you on the show. It's great to have all 4 of y'all on the show. Just a great group of folks. So appreciate all of y'all. And with that, we'll get to the news. Story number 1 from Ars Technica: ChatGPT and Whisper API's debut, allowing devs to integrate them into apps. So we've had some episodes of this show over the years. This Week in Voice started in 2017, which seems like an eon ago in pandemic time. We've had some episodes on this show where there's been some sort of bombshell thing that changed the way that we looked at everything going on. And that's kind of how this feels. We're going to go in the same order that we started with for the introduction. So Neji, I'm going to start with you. This is, I know you've incorporated elements of GPT into PayTalk. I'm interested, though, just from a general point of view, your thoughts on what transpired with all of this yesterday and how the story strikes you.
Thanks, Bradley. In fact, hearing about this yesterday made me smile because it sort of validates what we did actually about a month and a half ago at PayTalk, when we decided to integrate GPT with regular intent-based conversational AI, which we had built 2 years ago. So I'll just speak briefly about our own use case. So you could say, hey, hey Siri, suggest a meal plan for someone with diabetes. And it will generate the plan using GPT. And in this case, it can be ChatGPT via OpenAI's integration. And you can tap instantly, it's able to do a search across restaurants and grocery stores around you. And you can order instantly on a button click those items which are suggested. So that way we're bringing conversational AI into and GPT, and we're merging both intent-based conversational AI with generative AI as well. So when we saw that message, that post yesterday, my first thought was, wow, that's amazing, because we're hearing about even Snapchat trying to integrate some sort of generative AI into Snapchat. We're seeing use cases across the medical industry. We're seeing even law firms now are thinking about how they can, simplify work and all that. And so having that API, I think it's a step further in democratizing generative AI, and it will improve, despite the fact that generative AI has its limitations and all. Of course, you've heard of Bing Chat and all the things that's going on there, but I think opening this up actually would help give it better scrutiny, and will sort of make it easier for us to say, okay, you shouldn't be doing this, or you should do that, and all that. So I think it's a good idea to have Whisper and GPT 3.5 out there now.
Excellent. Yeah, no, and I appreciate you sharing some of that backstory. And I'm going to ask all four of y'all the same question. Brian, I'm coming to you next. So this is a major story. It feels major. It feels significant. Share with us your thoughts.
So yeah, I'll take it a bit to a different perspective, from a commercial perspective. So a few things that jumped up at me are like 90% cost reduction that they're advertising. That's very significant, because that's been one of the concerns with ChatGPT, of the cost and the valuable aspect of ChatGPT, because it's so cost heavy. So they're able to reduce the cost by 90%. That's great. Another thing that jumped up at me was the privacy consideration changes that they're making to make sure that the end users will own their own data, and the data isn't shared, and you can control whatever you want. We know world today very concerned with PII and stuff like that. So those two things came up at me. I'm very, very excited about this Whisper and ChatGPT API integration. ChatGPT did have an API previously, but not with Whisper. Whisper gives you the capability of adding voice, which is also what our company is all about, voice. It adds the aspect of voice to the ChatGPT interface. Before it was just text-based. Now you can broaden it, just like Neji says. It democratizes the and makes it more available to other companies that may not have even thought of using voice and AI to bring that into their platform. So that's great. It helps promote the usage of the app, helps spread the cost of the development, because now they can share it in different products, and the different products can then pay for their share of the GPT processing. And that's actually very similar to what we do here at Cerence, where we build technology that is then sold to the OEM. It's possible that the the car manufacturer can build the technology themselves, but in the end, the cost to build the technology just for a single OEM is probably not worth while. So by us at Cerence building that technology and then reselling it to different OEMs spreads the cost and makes it more very, very cost effective. I think that's very similar to what ChatGPT are doing now. OpenAI trying to broaden their scope and get the value back for the real value that they bring with their AI solution.
No, that's excellent. Yeah. No, Dan, I'm going to ask you the same thing. You obviously look at this from a different perspective than Neji and Brian do, but same question, big time story. Your thoughts?
My thoughts are that this is the biggest non-news I've heard in a long time, for all of the amazing advancements that have hit the market since November when ChatGPT was launched. A vendor in this day and age announcing the availability of an API, kind of a yawner. In fact, you expect any piece of technology now to be built API first. We've been using the unauthorized API at PeopleReign for months, so it's not that it hasn't been available programmatically. I think the more interesting bit of news here is the continued investment by OpenAI in the Whisper product. And the reason I say that is because I know, Bradley, your show is all about voice and the future of voice. Well, you got to believe that the incumbents in voice are the ones who own the voice data. And that's the vendors of the voice assistant platform. So to me, as a consumer of ChatGPT, as a vendor integrating with ChatGPT, I'd much rather them invest in NLP and in the underlying robustness of the ChatGPT model, rather than try to encroach on Amazon, Google, Apple, Microsoft territory, because I got to think that the winners in voice are going to be the ones who own all of that, massive, massive quantities of voice data. And that's probably not going to be the space where OpenAI ultimately wins.
No, I agree with that for the most part. It's interesting to hear your framing of the API, and I sort of buy that a little bit. But there's parts of what you said I'm going to come back to. Seth, I'm going to go to you and give you a chance to opine on this. Big story in my estimation, certainly in terms of number of people talking about it. Your thoughts?
So lots of thoughts for ChatGPT when you're working in NLP. I think when it came out in the end of 2022, I think it was just a matter of time for when it was going to be accessible as an API. What was amazing about ChatGPT was that it wasn't an API, right? That it was an interface, because underneath it, it was the technology that was built, in 2020. Yeah, I know that there were obviously, technological advancements with Instruct GPT and then GPT 3.5, but it was the interface around it that got it to be hundreds of millions of users. So for me, from a developer standpoint, this is just a change of a line in a code, right? It's one little change. And also it's important to understand, like, OpenAI is a company. This is a lot of marketing stuff as well. So they got the hype to be this frenzied state that we're in, and now they're monetizing. What's exciting about it is that there is a 90% reduction in price, as Brian alluded to, compared to GPT DaVinci 003. And they're also talked about some other things about having dedicated instances where developers can basically get a compute infrastructure, and then you can kind of choose how you request it. That's something that's very exciting on an enterprise level. Some other things, the privacy part was interesting, basically just confirming that they're using all of these inputs to improve their models, if you look at it the other way, right? But all in all, this is just part of the movement that's happening, and this is another step that's going to be making, one state-of-the-art chat model more accessible to more people. So it's exciting in the NLP world.
I have vivid memories of at the height of Alexa and then Google Assistant after it. Like there was a sequence of years, 2017 to 2019 or so, where preparing for this show required reading through about 20 different articles with 20 different pieces of information about Amazon Alexa to figure out what the one story or maybe two about Alexa worth including in that week's episode was. And we are right back to that with ChatGPT. So to prepare for this show right now, I had to read through, obviously the one we're talking about was the big one, from because it synthesized so many things. They actually did me a favor. They combined the ChatGPT API with Whisper, with the cost reduction, there was like 4 or 5, as y'all have noted, 4 or 5 news stories in one kind of with this. But the volume of noise, Seth, to your point just about the marketing, is so loud. And I want to pose a question to y'all, and whoever wants to answer it, be my guest. But there's been a thought with Silicon Valley and with tech coming out of the pandemic that smaller is better. So you've seen a lot of layoffs. They've been completely unapologetic. They've been we have to right size, or what, insert corporate jargon here for for whatever different companies have decided to do. And you look at, in an extreme case, like what Twitter has done, where Elon Musk has explicitly stated, I'm going back to startup mode. And other companies have been much more murky, to put it politely, with how they described it. Here, we're seeing a startup basically dictate terms to the market, saying boom, 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 here's how it's going to be, and step on it, step right up and play ball in our universe. And Google is rushing, to try to catch up, and a bunch of other companies. My question for y'all is that the right assessment? Is OpenAI really dealing from a position of strength, or did they just happen to be first and you're expecting 3, 4, 5, 6 months from now that the conversation has shifted decidedly away from them and some other company or companies is in control of this? Anybody who wants to opine on this, be my guest. Neji, fire away.
Thanks, Bradley. You mentioned the Alexa. I think in the voice space, we've had 2 major events have happened in the voice AI space and conversational AI space. The first was the Alexa moment when we had the Alexa launched. That was like such a big thing at that time. And the second is the ChatGPT release in November last year. So what we're seeing today is just more or less like I would say such a defining, the generative AI tech, it's such a defining moment for us in the sense that it really addresses what people or what startups or what tech should really be about, which is how useful is this tool? When Google launched and we stopped going to libraries to go find out, or encyclopedias and the rest of them, we stopped that. Now we have this OpenAI's ChatGPT rolling out, and I don't need to go Google search anything, or I don't need to go, So I think that appeal is what actually has put them in such a place of strength and given them OpenAI that much power. And I don't see this fizzling off going forward. So I see them actually being the new trailblazers, and everyone else is just going to either follow or get left out on the way. Those are my 2 cents, though.
Yeah, no, that's great. Other thoughts? Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, so I'm going to jump into this Meta Llama, whatever they call it, because it ties in exactly what you're saying, ties in perfectly into that article that you forwarded to us that was very, very interesting to me, which is, Meta tried this generative AI back in August 2022, and they were laughed at. They were the laughing stock of the industry, because when Mark Zuckerberg showcased it, the first thing that he did was tell me about Mark Zuckerberg, and the system came back saying Mark Zuckerberg is a manipulative, bad person, right? That there's an article. They had the same problem with their generative drawing, where it drew like a small, really badly looking Mark Zuckerberg next to a really bad Eiffel Tower. So they tried doing it, and they got such bad backlash. One of my colleagues actually put a really nice perspective on this. OpenAI are successful, and sort of it seems as if dictating to the market what to do, because they're such a small company. So if there is backlash, and there is some backlash with ChatGPT, people trying it out, we've seen it, I think you discussed it also in the podcast last week, where there's backlash where ChatGPT is responding with some, let's say, non-politically correct or biased perspectives. So OpenAI, because they're a small company, they don't really need to worry about the evaluation. People just want the technology, like Neji said, they just want the technology. Let's see what we can do with it. But OpenAI doesn't need to worry about the backlash of the street. Whereas Facebook, Meta, Google, look what happened with Bard. They're getting bombasted. They're getting killed by the street because they're such big players. So for them to try doing something like this can be disastrous. So that's what happened with Meta, and I think now Meta with this Llama case, they're trying a new way of building the same exact thing, but in a more what they call responsible AI. So putting a spin on it, which I applaud. It's a good thing to do when you fail to come back on the horse and try something new. That's actually what I do at Cerence as responsible for innovation. We try to fail fast and just try something new right away. And that's how we become successful.
No, I think those are great comments. And before we move on to story number 2 fully, Dan and Seth, I'll put it to either one of y'all. OpenAI for real? Are they going to just dictate terms from here on out, or are we going to be talking about another company 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, Bradley, we as a society love to hero make. And we love a David versus Goliath story. And whether it was, Chad and the YouTube guys in 2005, or this open AI thing is actually, to me, reminiscent of a couple of years ago. What happened with Zoom during the pandemic, there was just this cultural zeitgeist surrounding this technology. There were meeting, remote meeting technologies for years, and they weren't called Zoom. It was WebEx, and it was not a new technology. WebEx was there a decade before Zoom, and yet David slayed Goliath, and we all cheered it on, and it changed culture, it changed life. OpenAI, I think it is one of those stories. It's a cultural moment that we're having. Just by comparison, Google, the Goliath, has about 190,000 employees. OpenAI to date has less than 400. So rough order of magnitude, Google's got 500x the team, and yet we're criticizing Bard because it spews a bunch of nonsense, it hallucinates, and we're amazed, we're fascinated. We can't get enough of ChatGPT, in part because it's a hero story, but in part because it captured the imagination of what incredible NLP can do. I don't think there's been an example of NLP that's so accessible. And those of us who have been in the space, AI and specifically NLP for a while, just know how hard of a technological problem they solved. So when 400 people can slay 190,000 people, get a product to market that hallucinates, but it does it in a way that is more respectful and just captures the public imagination, that's a story we latch on to. And it so transcends the technology and LLMs. It's become, the current version of the hero story that we love to amplify.
I like that a lot, and like all, I'm coming to you, Seth, in just a second. The like all hero stories, give it time, and we make him the villain. That's the other part of it. So if OpenAI sticks around, I can't wait to see how we ultimately decide to demonize them. Seth, I want to give you the last word on this important story number one. Your thoughts, OpenAI, they sticking around, they for real, they a paper tiger, they'll be gone in 3 to 6 months. Your opinion.
Now, OpenAI is going to be here for a little bit. They have some extremely smart minds, that would be an understatement. Some of the people that are working on ChatGPT are the, pioneers in reinforcement learning, the pioneers that are back in the AlexNet paper in 2012. But I think a key thing is that, yes, it's 400 person company, but they are, deeply, they have deep resources, right? So they have Microsoft on their side. They've had it before this $10 billion, right? And training these models on a huge corpus of data takes unbelievable amount of resources. I can't do that, right? A single person can't do that. You need millions of dollars, tons of compute resources. But just off the top of my head, I did a quick little search. OpenAI is in a competitive market, right? Obviously, there's Hugging Face, which is giving access to tons of models, Anthropic, Jurassic, Cohere, DeepMind, which is outside of Google, but DeepMind is going to have an unbelievable language model and multimodal model coming very soon. And also, obviously what we're going to be talking about next, Facebook, they've got a great one too. And one other thing that I just want to say, sometimes there's a lot of luck, and the timing of it, right? When is the world ready for these types of things? When it comes to technology, right? Like Apple tried Newton and it failed, right? Think about Palm Pilot. That was just like ahead of its time. Sometimes it's when is the world ready to accept these things? This happens to be that time, this 2023 with ChatGPT. That's what captured the imagination of people. That's what got hundreds of millions of people to use it. That's what gets my mom to ask me about ChatGPT. 2 years ago, no one cared about it, right? Now my aunt's asking me how to use ChatGPT.
So those comments are great all the way around, and I appreciate that. So I've told people privately this. So we're assembling this Conversational AI Leadership Council for late April at Project Voice 2023, and the purpose of this council will be to sign the new ethics and integrity charter, putting philosophical guardrails around LLM-based AI. So I've been around for a while in this space. And when I tell people about what it is that we do with Project Voice, or what I'm thinking about or working on, I would say prior to the pandemic, there was about a 20% chance that somebody would like show enthusiasm or have any idea what I'm talking about. 80% chance of, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. In the pandemic, that increased to about 50-50, a coin flips chance. If I'm talking to a random person, oh, okay, well, you know what? Yeah, some voice stuff or Alexa or like the contact center, we're using that at work. So it was on the way up. Now, as of the last couple of months, I'm having a conversation with, say, a digital transformation executive at insert company name here, who's looking to make some investments in the space, or somebody who's not thinking about this, not a subject matter expert, but they're involved with technology enough, or they're just sort of interested in the world. Sign me up. I'm coming to that immediately. Say no more. And then I was telling someone this yesterday. There's been some situations where I've told somebody they can be part of it, and then I just got busy and I didn't follow up when I told them I would. They're pinging me every day. Where is my confirmation of this? And they really want to be part. The hunger is so real for this thing, not only to use it, but to make sure it's used responsibly. It just echoes all of y'all's comments that, yeah, this is probably sticking around. And so that's my sense on this too. But it does tie in with our story number 2. I'm going to go in the reverse order for this, by the way. I'm going to read the headline. This is from VoiceBot. Meta introduces large language model Llama as a competitor for OpenAI. And Seth, I'm going to start with you and go in reverse order. My question for you is simple. We've talked about Facebook. I've refused to call them Meta. I'm never calling them that. We've talked about Facebook on this show, and similarly, I'm not ever referring to it as hallucinations. We call these errors. Okay. Anyway, we talked about Facebook a lot in this show over the years, and usually the stories orbit the incredible distrust associated with that organization, so much so that, yes, they changed the name for the metaverse or whatever, but don't kid yourself, they were looking to rebrand anyway. My question for you in the panel: can Facebook participate in this LLM-based AI world, given that the level of distrust of that company is so high? Your thoughts?
Man, what a loaded question. Let me start off. Can I address the hallucinations versus errors?
Be my guest.
Oh, okay, great. So, with these models, these are generative models that we're talking about when we talk about ChatGPT. And they are trained on a task where we're trying to predict the next word in a sequence. And it's very interesting. It's a little bit different than other types of AI, like predictive modeling, where you're given, let's say, like text categorization, and you're given a certain piece of text and you want to categorize it, and you might categorize it in the wrong category. So that's what I view as an error. For generative models, right, you're producing text, you're using, statistical, how often words are used together, and it does hallucinate. I actually like that word because it's creating facts and putting things together in its mind that not its mind, that's putting it together that don't actually exist. So I actually like the term hallucinate. But yeah.
So no problem, no beef there. You know what I mean? I don't like it from the corporate marketing slant of it. Yeah, there's some truth to it. It's a very benevolent phrase to use, I would say. So let me make sure I got your answer to the original question.
Oh no, I'll get back into it.
Is Facebook going to be able to participate meaningfully in this new world?
So I think that parts of Facebook, it's hard, right? It's a business and they're trying to make money, but fair, right? Facebook, AI, and responsibility. You hope that they are doing, the right things, with Jan LeCun at the helm, I mean, I like the work that he produces. One nice thing about Llama, they did a good job of making the data sets not using proprietary data sets, right? So using data sets that anyone has access to. That's one of the criticisms of ChatGPT and some of these other models, is that if you wanted to start from scratch, you don't have access to that. So making the data open is very important, and that they're releasing it to the research world, right? So researchers are going to be able to go inside. They're going to be able to take a look at what makes it tick. The thing right now about ChatGPT is that it's not open source. Don't be fooled by OpenAI in the name of their company. It is not open source. You cannot look and see what it's like. With the API being open, you might be able to see some more things. You can find out a little bit about their chat markup language and things. But the nice thing about Llama is that they have an open data set. It's accessible, it's open source, it's for research, and it's outperforming GPT-3. That actually doesn't surprise me that much. There's tons of models that outperform GPT-3 that are much smaller. So like sentence transformers crushes it. So yeah, I think it's possible as long as it doesn't get too intertwined with business. A little long-winded, but thanks for letting me go into it.
That's great. So that's a decided vote for yes. Dan, I'm coming to you. Same question. Facebook has a lot of baggage. You see the article, they're doing some cool stuff. Will they be a meaningful participant in this LLM-based world?
Well, first off, this absolutely does not restore the public's faith in Facebook as a good steward of our data. I think that ship sailed a long time ago. I find the irony here that that they're taking the high road, talking about exercising responsible AI, offering Llama, but only to nonprofits and academic institutions. They're the ones that, like 90 days ago, launched Galactica, the LLM that famously bombed out after like 24 hours. It was literally like Meta, Facebook's Tay moment from Microsoft from a couple of years ago. So now, to say, unlike Bard, unlike, various other LLMs, we're going to be very cautious, is just, it's comical. And I get it. It is responsible, more responsible than what they did with Galactica, but they got a long way to go before they're going to live down the reputation of not being good stewards of your data and the responsible exercising responsible AI.
I'm on that train. They have a lot of past sins to pay for, as far as I'm concerned. And Brian, so you've heard one yes, you've heard another. Dan, I'll call you a maybe. I'll put you in the maybe box.
I'd give me a no.
Okay, we'll call it a no. Brian, interesting story. You've heard the comments. Your thoughts?
I would echo word for word exactly what Dan said, but let me add a bit more to that perspective. So whenever I hear about a company trying to create some new technology or emulate technology when there's a successful technology in the market, so we know OpenAI's ChatGPT is very successful right now. So all these big companies are trying to jump on the bandwagon and create their own solution. Whenever I hear that, it reminds me of the early 2010s. I was probably the only person in my city who owned a Zune, a Microsoft Zune. I wonder who here knows what a Microsoft Zune is. So the iPod was such a success. Now Microsoft saw it. Microsoft is huge. Even compared to Google, they're huge, right? And they came up with this idea of, let's create our own Zune. So I went and bought one. Guess what? It was really, really cool. It was a really, really cool device, but nobody bought into it because the iPod was so successful. So now my question is, if I'm an investor and I want to invest in Meta Facebook, are they going to be as successful as OpenAI? Can they emulate it? Can they draw people away from OpenAI to use their software? And I'll go back to a bit what Seth and Dan said. So Seth says timing the market is very, very important. I don't know if Meta timed the market correctly. They should have done it earlier, and now going into what Dan said, they already bombed. They already created such animosity against them that I don't know if people will actually buy into this responsible AI and research based. Although I do like the fact that they're actually open source and not like OpenAI completely closed. And going back to another thing that Dan said about David versus Goliath, I'm not. Cerence is very similar. We also try to get into the vehicle. We work with the OEM. We're not a small company, but we're by no means Google or Amazon, who are also trying to get into the space. The nice thing when you're smaller, you're much more agile and you can customize your software much easier. Whereas as a big corporation, there's a lot more bureaucracy, a lot more investment needed. I just heard that Amazon, going back to what you said about layoffs and stuff like that, Amazon laid off a big portion of their voice team. So as smaller companies, we are more agile. We can time the market correctly and adjust. Whereas these big companies, they just come up with big buzzwords. But is there really something behind it? If I were an investor, I would say no. There's not much there.
No, I think those are great comments as well. So we got one yes and two no's, Neji. So you'll either tie this thing up or shift it decidedly in one way over the other. Your thoughts on Facebook and LLM AI?
Okay. I hate to break your heart, Bradley, but my answer is actually yes and a no. So whichever way, I'm not breaking the tie, but I'll start with the yes. Facebook has some of the, like, of course, Jan LeCun is a pioneer in the space. So we have some of the brightest minds also working on AI within their team. And I see them actually playing a role in improving LLMs. So LLMs, we're still at the early days as far as I know. And so there's still a lot of improvement. So we can see on the technical perspective, we will see a lot of progress coming in from there and advancements coming from their side. But so that's where the yes comes from. Now on the no side, on a business perspective, I don't know. Because there's already a conversation around, hey, do not put sensitive information when you're talking to ChatGPT, do not put proprietary information. Companies are scared. I think yesterday, is it Walmart or so, put out something that said, hey, please do not put in sensitive company-based info in ChatGPT because it's learning off that. So think about it, like already Facebook or Meta with its reputation about being a data, I don't want to say the word, but you can think about how the reaction would be. So that's why I say no. I don't see them in the near term on the business or on the non-technical side. I don't see any way for headway for them on that angle. But on the technical side, yes, there has to be. Yeah.
So thank you for that answer. So you have a bright future in politics, I might add. Yes and no. Thank you. No, that's great. The comments are great. And Facebook, I guess this means we're going to have to keep talking about them on this show. We had a period where we didn't talk about them for like a whole season, and that wasn't so bad. But don't forget, this is the company, that my favorite Facebook story is that I forget when it was like a couple of years ago. I don't remember if it was during the pandemic or right before, where news came out that they have an entire staff of people that basically patrol Facebook for content, and they see so much pornographic and violent content that they need therapy for a long time, like during the employment and then after it. And these are just Facebook's, human casualties, basically. Like as if I didn't have a negative perception about the company before that made me have one for sure. Y'all might know when the story was. It was 2 or 3 years ago. But that's the DNA of the company that we're talking about here. So I am definitely in the no category on this one myself. Appreciate the comments. I want to give us a little bit of time for story 3, and I'm going to read this out loud. This is from Vice. I had an AI chatbot write my eulogy. It was very weird. So this, we're back to on this show ending with a funny or bizarre story, which I really like to do. There was years where we had different things that people dreamed up to tell Alexa, which were extremely strange, and now we're with some of that with chatbots in this particular case. I want to start with I want to give all four of you a chance to opine on this. I guess I'll go in the original order, and so Neji, Brian, Dan, and then Seth, I'll conclude with you. Neji, this is a weird one, but it's a sign of the times. Your thoughts on this piece?
First question was when I read that, I was like, why would you ask this thing to write your eulogy? And I was like, okay, it tells you just how much people are invested in trying to understand the usage of this thing and its potential use cases that beyond even what probably the creators thought of. Like what we did at PayTalk was put the GPT on Siri, so you can go, hey Siri, write me this and that. Hey Siri, do that. So, but in this instance, I wouldn't say the person who tried that was crazy, but I think that's a crazy use case because how much does the AI, how much does it know about you? Like more or less, so I think people should chill. Like, come on, like ChatGPT wouldn't do everything. It's not gonna it's not gonna tell you about your mom or history or something like that. So I think it's just one of those use cases where probably the person was testing out the bot and trying to see how much how well it could perform.
It's a pretty human task to write a eulogy, right? Like, I agree. Like it's testing the boundaries here. Brian, I'm coming to you. Weird story, but like I said, sign of the times. Your thoughts?
Well, so this story is coming from Vice, right? So first, I applaud that they got the sense of how AI works, how ChatGPT works very correctly, very accurately. And now, actually, in the political sphere, I won't go too political here, but in the political sphere of North America, there's this whole idea of equity and equality, right? So if we're talking about equity, this AI generative text is promoting equity because, for example, I've been, unfortunately, over the past couple of years in several funerals, so we'll take it directly to the eulogy and then go away from there. I've been to funerals, and unfortunately, sometimes the priest, the rabbi, the imam, they don't know the person that they're eulogizing. So they come up with some keys, exactly like this person did, and come up with a generative eulogy. So now anyone can do it. If you don't know how to speak, if you're not very affluent, if you don't know how to phrase your thoughts, you can have ChatGPT phrase them for you. Equity all across the board. It's great. It's promoting accessibility to things that no one has ever thought that you would be able to do. Now, if we take that a bit away from the eulogy perspective, books, music, nowadays music, I don't know how many of you like current pop. I keep on telling my children that in 10 years from now, no one's going to listen to any of this music because they'll figure out that it's crap. Most of this music today, not all of it, by no means, but most of the music generated today is generated based off of what they think people will like, what combination of chords. That actually goes back to the guy who was on your show last week, who was a musician. I'm taking away from his thunder. They keep on compiling. So it's compiling the music rather than writing real music. So they just put chords together that would sound pleasing to the ear, but it's not really real art. I wouldn't call it art. There's a guy on YouTube called Rick Beato who shreds all this new music to pieces. And the same thing with books. You have, let's say, Robert Ludlum. If you read the Bourne series, after book 3, it's no longer Robert Ludlum. Someone's trying to emulate it, and it's just not the same. So the fact that ChatGPT produces text that seems to be curated, it might be pleasing to some people. If you really want something higher definition, yes, you need to customize it. You need a professional to do it properly. Very similar again to what we do at Cerence. So if you want the Google Assistant, if you want to use your Android Auto or your Apple CarPlay and have the same flavor of system, regardless of which car you go into, go ahead and use it. But most OEMs, most car manufacturers want to have a special experience. That's how they sell the car. I want a Ford. I don't want a Dodge. I want a BMW. I don't want a Mercedes because of the experience. So if you want to customize your experience, you have to come to a company like Cerence so you can customize it rather than going to Google or Amazon using this big platform.
No, I think that your comments on that are really interesting. Just to tie it back to equity and what you said about that, I had not thought about it in any way. So I thought that's really well taken. Dan, your thoughts, and then Seth, I'll give you the last word. Interesting story. What'd you think?
First and foremost, I applaud Janice Rose, who not only published this article, but has recently been doing some really laudable reporting, exposing how these LLMs actually work. So kind of eulogy, parlor trick thing aside, it's a reminder that what these models do is apply math and some stats to a lot of data to, as Seth discussed earlier, predict the next word in a sentence. And turns out it's a really significant engineering challenge, but that's what it's doing. So nobody should be shocked when it basically, regurgitates back some derived version of information about, Janice pretending to be dead. She published another article recently with about a researcher named Sasha Lucioni from Hugging Face, who developed a model that exposes bias in DALL-E 2, so image generation. So I'm really glad that somebody's out there, not just kind of like we're all, just genuflecting to ChatGPT, but actually educating the public about the way it works so that we can kind of understand what the appropriate bounds are, when to trust it, what it's good for, what it's not good for. So that was my takeaway. Janice, you go, girl. Come on my podcast, all right, if you're listening to this.
I'll be copying her on the LinkedIn post. Yeah, hopefully she sees this. Seth, the last word is yours. Your thoughts on this piece?
Yeah, this was definitely a really interesting piece. AI generating and then humans consuming is such an interesting idea, right? Like, she writes, none of my friends or family members would ever dare memorialize me with writing something that was so anesthetic and faux sentimental, right? So like GPT can create something that looks a lot like a eulogy, but it doesn't know the person. And Brian, you bring up something that I've been thinking about too with like pop music, right? Sometimes you think about it like it's a machine, right? Like that it's just going through the same machine. All these songs sound the same. Obviously, there's exceptions to the rule, but there are certain formulas that people follow. They say there's these 4 chords that almost every song that's on the radio can be distilled down to. For me, it's this other aspect to it. It's how humans and machines are interacting. So when it comes to music, let's say, I'm not that impressed that it's impressive, obviously, that AI can make a song and write lyrics and have a great melody progression and all that. But that's not what brings you to the concert, right? It's watching the human emote, right? Believing them and, seeing seeing the emotion. And it's an interesting, we're moving in a really interesting direction of humans plus AI, right? For all of these things. When it comes to, writing a eulogy, no, don't take the output and publish that, right? But when you want to outline for your essay, sure, that can help you along. In the medical field, for example, who's the best person to do the surgery on you? Is it the best doctor? Is it the best machine? No, it's the best doctor guided by the machine with using all of the outputs of AI and machine learning. So at Loris, what we do is a lot of that too, because we're dealing with people who are very upset, and then how customer service agents should respond to them. And that's our motto, basically. It's like machines aren't going to replace humans. It's going to be humans that are augmented by machines that are using sort of these superpowers. And yeah, it's exciting to see how we're going to continue to consume the information that's created by these generative models. Like, I know last week there was talking about like books that were being created by GPT-3, and it's like, well, are they any good? Are they worth reading? And same thing with these songs, same things with these eulogies. But one thing that's very interesting with these models is, have you ever like brainstormed with it? You know, going like back and forth. That's when you really get the most out of it. When you have that back and forth. And also the creativity, don't just think of it as it's just the machine doing it on its own. Remember, there's the prompt that had to go into it too. And there's creativity that's based around that. And I think that that's where a lot of the research is going and will continue to go.
That's a great place to leave it. Great comments all the way around. Just to keep us on time, we'll call it there. I will throw in that my alma mater, who I'm going to leave nameless for the purpose of this podcast, made news recently, a couple weeks ago, from putting out a press release. It was a response to a terrorist. There was a mass shooting somewhere, Oklahoma, or I think is the one they were responding to. And the entire press release is written by ChatGPT. And when somebody figured that out, they had a lot of blowback. Then they had to issue another press release about the press release that they issued, apologizing for the previous press release. It was a disaster. It was a sign of the times, and I think a good punctuation mark on this story as well as this conversation. Gentlemen, thank you for the time. Thank you for sharing your expertise with not just me, but with the audience as well. It's greatly appreciated. For This Week in Voice, Season 8, Episode 7. Thank you for listening. If you're on your podcast provider of choice, thank you for watching. If you're watching us on YouTube, until next time.